I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at Gold Derby, here with VFX supervisors Sean Faden and Anders Langlands, whose masterful work on Disney's live-action Mulan just earned them an Oscar nomination alongside colleagues Seth Mowry and Steve Ingram. Guys, congratulations on your Oscar nomination. Who would like to tell us first about the morning of when you found out you were nominated?
Anders, you go first.
Yeah. Well, the nominations happened very early in the morning on New Zealand time. So I woke up, my wife said, "Oh, you've been nominated for an Oscar." I said, she was already on her phone. I said, "Oh, that's nice." And I went back to sleep again. And then when I woke up, I got much more excited. And then, of course, you start getting emails and calls from friends, old colleagues, everybody, is very excited for you. So that whole part of the morning, it's a bit like Christmas morning, really, but better. It's great.
It is pretty amazing. So I'm in Budapest. So for me, it happened around I don't know 1 p.m. I think. So I was sitting out. I went out on my balcony and I actually recorded my reaction because the Academy asked us to do that if we could. I sent it. I don't know if anyone will ever see it. I showed it to my family, but it was basically I was watching it. So watching it live, and I'm watching it back. I've never seen myself so nervous. I was just like, I actually really was pretty nervous. Like, anyway, they say it, and then and I was like freaking out, and I yelled down the street because one of my coworkers that lives down the street, and she knew that I was watching it, and I thought maybe she was watching it too because we had the day off, and just making a fool of myself. And then just I yelled to the guy across the street on the balcony saying, "I just got nominated." He didn't speak English, so it was just like I had to tell somebody, But,
You did.
but yeah, it's pretty amazing. You get a lot of outpouring of congrats from lots of friends and family, and it's just like it's a very busy texting day.
Oh, I can imagine. And next time, wherever you should have probably learned how to say, "I just got nominated" in Hungarian, but
That would have
it
been
is what it is.
better.
Next time,
Yeah.
wherever you happen to be. But Sean, this is your first nomination, which is remarkable. You've been working for such a long time on some great projects. So, but what does it feel like to be a debutante at the Oscars? Is it surreal? What are your feelings?
It is very surreal. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, but I've really only been sort of well, I don't know. I guess I've been working on this on big movies for a long time, and I had a shot back in 2002 on Triple X. I was a part of the Bake Off on that one, but it wasn't in the cards then. Yeah, I mean, it's super surreal to be in a position now where, like, as a kid, I've watched the Oscars my whole life, and you really feel like when someone gets nominated, that's sort of the pinnacle. And I believed that as a kid, that like there's some magic that would just sort of happen, and the world would know if you did a good job, you would get nominated. But now I realize that it's actually really special because it's your peers. I mean, it is the visual effects branch of the Academy, and those are people who really know. They know what it takes to actually make a large scale or difficult, tricky kind of visual effects project, and so to be recognized by them is extra special. So it's a really, I just feel super amazing about the whole thing. I'm stoked, and I don't care, beyond here what happens. This is amazing. So
Yeah, the nomination is always the exciting part. It happens to be that when you're sitting in the seat, then all of a sudden you just want this desperate desire to win. I hear that all the time. But and Anders, maybe you feel that way because this is your second nomination. You were nominated for The Martian in 2016. What's more exciting, the first nomination, which is like the virgin one, or is it the second seal of approval?
Yeah, I'd say your first time is probably the most exciting, but I'd like to pretend I was very nonchalant about it. I think I tried to make it sound that way just now when you asked about the morning off, but I definitely had trouble sleeping the night before because I was nervous about the whole thing. Yeah, I think it's to echo what Sean said. Just getting nominated is a huge honor because you are being judged by your peers, and being selected as some of the best work of the year. Not that I wouldn't, not that I turned down a statue if anyone offered one, but
yeah,
but certainly I think this stage is incredibly exciting, and that buzz of just, and particularly the number of people that want to offer you congratulations, and how excited everybody else is for you as well is kind of infectious as well. And it's not, and so it doesn't get any less exciting after one anyway. Maybe after 10. I don't know. I'll 10.
We'll see how you feel after 10. So Anders, talk us through the VFX bake-off process, because we don't hear a lot about it. We're all trying to listen to whispers on Twitter about what happened at the presentation. Why do you think your presentation hit a nerve with the VFX branch?
Well, Sean, you could probably talk to the process better than I can. You actually make the reel and everything. I'd like to think that just the quality of our work spoke to everybody, and it just I thought it looked great. I was a bit nervous compared to some of the other films because I don't feel like we had like a gimmick or anything like particularly like, oh wow, this is really interesting thing. I was very proud of the work, and I thought all the shots that we did looked beautiful, and the movie as a whole looked beautiful. But sometimes you worry that's not enough when everyone's talking about, oh, we didn't have any LED screens, for example, which seems to be the key thing that everyone's on about this year, and that sort of thing. There was, without gimmicks, it was just the work standing up for itself. And so I'm actually really pleased that we that was deemed good enough for everybody.
Yeah. What about you, Sean?
Well, yeah, I would agree with what Anders saying, that it was, I think what separates our work from some of the other stuff is that there was a really large variety. Like we had so many different environments and so many different looks and so many different sort of VFX techniques that were employed to actually create the full, the whole scope of work. We had animals, we had avalanches, we had massive cities, we had huge environments, we had battles, soldiers, horses, chickens, like, and so many different sort of techniques, because while we did shoot some second unit and some scenic unit kind of stuff in China, everything was for the most part shot in New Zealand. And so it was, our main unit never went to China. So we ended up doing a sort of a mixture of either adding Chinese elements to New Zealand footage, or even our Chinese footage still needed a lot of zhuzhing up, to kind of turn it into something that looked like historical China, or make it look more aspirational, more Disney. But I think the reel, which was put together, we had a really great editor working for us within Disney named David, and he put together all this stuff, and we had actually put it together just when we were finishing the VFX work, so it was pretty fresh in our heads. But then we kind of moved things around, and then I was doing voiceovers from here, and he did a masterful job of like putting it all together and making it make sense. And I think that's key, is sort of like having some space so that the people who are watching the reels can appreciate, especially now, because you're not up there on stage to be able to really intimate what you did. So it's all going to rely on that voiceover piece and the visuals. So it was critical to get that right, and they did a great job of putting it together.
Yeah. Let's talk about some of the highlights, because your work on the vast Imperial City is so impressive. I think when people think about Mulan, the movie, maybe compared to the other films being Love and Monsters, The Midnight Sky, The One and Only, Ivan and Tenet, Mulan is the most visually arresting film. It's so beautiful to look at, and that's obvious. A lot of that has to do with Mickey Caro and Mandy Walker's work, but you guys really amped up this huge Imperial City that when I was watching it, I thought, how on earth did they do it? So let's over to the experts. Give us a really brief rundown on how you did it.
Andrew, go for it, man. This is
I don't know how brief I can be. It was quite a lot of work. It was, well, creating a city in CG is hard, just because of the scope. The amount of stuff that you have to put in. There's buildings, there's trees, there's walls, there's rivers, there's roads. There's all the street furniture. There's the people that go in. There's all of the different variation, in color and life and signs of life you need to bring to something like that to make it feel like a real lived-in space. Is huge amount of set decoration, but it's why you tend not to build an entire city for real if you're shooting a movie. So, but so in doing it digitally, kind of just as much work because of everything that you have to put in there. So we actually came up with a new technique for developing this, where we essentially created a procedural system in the computer that could basically create the whole city, lay out all of the buildings and all of the wars and all of the rivers and everything based on maps and place all of the buildings. But we didn't have to move all of that stuff around by hand. And those rules for how the city was laid out, we divined from historical texts. So we looked at old maps of Chang'an, which was the capital of the Tang Dynasty, which is roughly the period in which Mulan is set. And that was a hugely impressive city, much bigger than Manhattan, but like 1 million people living there. So there's been a lot of study done on the way that city was laid out, and you can find maps of like the overall layout of the city, the waterways through it. You can find maps of where bars and restaurants were, where high-ranking government officials lived, and we could turn all of that information into this set of rules that we could describe to the layout system to say, well, if there's more wealthy, higher-ranking government official people living in a certain area of the city, then we're going to put our bigger, more ornate buildings there because we assume that it's wealthier. And the system would lay the buildings out on the terrain based on those rules, and we could adjust like the shape of the terrain. We started off with the actual historical location of Chang'an in terms of the elevation of the city and the way that the rivers move through it. But we quickly, once we actually just push the button, so to speak, and generated this thing, you end up with something that's like, it's interesting, but it looks like you imagine the actual historical city would have looked like, but it's not exactly cinematic necessarily. So then we had to start going in and changing the underlying landscape, moving districts around to put more interesting things in front of the camera, bringing certain parts of the city closer so that we can more clearly establish different locations in the audience's mind. Basically just doing everything you want to do to tell a story cinematically. But the flexibility of the system allowed us to do that really quickly and be able to iterate creatively on the whole design of the city. And that then gave us the time to really just add hand-dressed detail into those areas where you really want to see things. Like, there's the first shot you see of the city where we're rising up over the gates, and you've got a little marketplace on the left-hand side and a little military academy on the right where you can see the recruits doing their drills out front on the quad. And so telling little stories like that, that really that adds to the overall atmosphere. The militaristic sense of it was something that was important to Nikki because she wanted to to establish the the sort of militaristic nature of the empire, as well as it feeling quite metropolitan almost. So that's where we have the marketplace with people going about their days, boating on the water and things. And that's great for just helping make it feel like a real place that people can relate to and tells a story of what this culture is like, or what the world is like in the films. It's also just a lot of fun, just playing and creating all these little vignettes.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. That sounds incredibly fun, actually. Really difficult though, because the film, I think Nikki was acclaimed for how immersive this film felt, and a lot of that has to do with all the artisans that she employed on the film, including you guys. Sean, there's something in particular that I wanted to raise, but before I do, I want you to tell us what you're most proud of. Like, is there a sequence or shot that you are that you'd like to point to as probably your best work on this film?
It's a toss-up. I would say it's I love there's a shot at dawn that is the hawk approaching the Imperial City, which I just think turned out gorgeous. And we had an insane amount of material that went into creating these city shots. But when you really go through the movie, you go, wow, there's not that many shots because they're all kind of like, they're all different, but each one has to sort of tell a very specific story. And so Nikki was not about, and this is great, she was not about the expositional visual effects, about having, 20 shots, establish a city. It was like, we got one shot to establish a city and in a sequence. And this shot is a really beautiful approach where you see the entire city laid out before you, and it's sort of like that pre-sunrise lighting. It's beautiful. And the hawk looks great in the shot. It's fully CG. We had shot a drone pass as reference for the shot. But of course, the lighting wasn't great. It was way too smoggy, all that kind of stuff that sort of ended up in our Chinese plates often. And the team at Weta took that and kind of, rebuilt it and turned it into a fully CG environment that was the full Chang'an city and all that stuff. And it really turned out great. The other one I would say would be our avalanche shots, where we've got a fully CG black wind horse in a full frame with Mulan galloping in the snow, which is still, it's one of the best CG. And I'm not just saying that because I worked on it, but I feel like it's one of the best CG horses that I've seen in a movie. And
Yeah.
you know, ImageWorks did it. That was Seth's team. They did a fantastic job of turning Steve Ingram's Buck, which was animated based on our animations. It was just a really good collaboration. And just to speak to that, you know, in terms of all the good artisans that Nikki surrounded herself with, you have Grant Major, you know, creating these amazing sets and amazing designs for concepts, and you've got Mandy Walker, who was an amazing an awesome partner to say what are we going to do here, and really talking to it. And Anders was on set a lot with us, and we talk about, you know, what the lighting in the sky should be for this, because we're doing a full digital construction site or whatever. So all those things, having all these talented people around you, and Bina, you know, our costume designer, who was also nominated. You know, we worked together to figure out what the sleeves would be for Gong Li, for her, you know, the sleeve action, and sort of what length of material would kind of make sense, and how we could then augment that. And it was not, no one was just saying, here, this is what you get, and visual effects make it work. It wasn't like that. It was really like, we got to all talk together and figure out how each of us could kind of amplify each other's work.
You know, that horse work, I'm so glad you raised that, because I was, maybe because I'm dumb, but I just bought it as being so realistic, and then realized that because I was so in the narrative that it was very much visual effects. The final thing I was going to raise, because we've unfortunately run out of time, is the transformation work with Gong Li's sorceress character. That blew my mind. And maybe it's just such a simple thing to do. I don't know, but it's just so effective, and I just thought it was really beautiful. Who worked on that, and what can you tell us, maybe in 30 seconds, if that's even possible?
Just a quick intro. Anders and Weta did the most sort of interesting one, I think, but it really speaks to the overall vibe of the visual effects in this movie, which is like subtle, beautiful, and not knocking the audience over the head. Anders, go ahead.
Yeah, we did a couple, but I think the one that's my favorite is the long tracking shot walking as the soldier transforms into the witch and then transforms into the horse, down the alleyway, which I remember in our first meeting, Sean asking me like, oh, do you want to shoot this on green screen, or do you want to shoot this do you think we should shoot this in China on a location? And I said, oh no, China definitely, for you know, because I wanted to get the natural light and the actual environment there, you know, with a properly dressed set in a natural location, rather than shooting it on a patch of green and trying to recreate it later. And I was questioning that decision the entire way through, because there's the extra complexity of trying to line up, you know, multiple plates shot, you know, in late afternoon in a tight alley as the light's changing on every take, and trying to get all that to work together made that shot incredibly difficult. But I think I made the right decision in the end, because it does actually, the lighting really helps that. I think it looks beautiful in the real location. But we put so much effort into, as Sean said, just trying to make it understated, you know, trying to treat it as like a sleight of hand magic trick rather than a big flashy in your face visual effects kind of thing. And because Nikki, you know, kept on coming back to saying, like, you know, she wanted to have grace and elegance, like the catchwords for this. And so that we really took that and tried to make it feel almost like balletic, as, you know, working the, you know, progression of the transformation with the soldier's footsteps moving forward, and that transforms into the witch. And then, you know, we start seeing individual pieces of costume start to morph and transform from one to the other, trying to find little ways, you know, that we could hide the blend, like the, you know, as Yashi, who was playing the witch in that scene, comes forward, her sleeve wipes frame, and we use that as a wipe to go from our fully digital, almost completely digital witch back to the plate as that comes through. And so it was really, it's a really complex sort of jigsaw puzzle, trying to put all those pieces together and do it in a nice rhythmical way that played into, you know, the feeling that Nikki wanted for the shot, where it's not, you know, it doesn't give you very many places to hide when you can't just put, you know, big glowing fairy dust over everything to hide the
and that shot rounds out my top 3 favorite shots. So, you know,
there you go.
Covered them.
It's so seamless, and I think that's one of the main reasons why you guys are talking to me today and were nominated, because it's not only is it beautiful and immersive, but really seamless. Because as soon as a visual effect is not, as you well know, it takes you out of the film. So guys, the only regret I have is that we weren't able to really experience Mulan on a big screen, because when the film came out, it's when the pandemic hit us all. But it's streaming on Disney Plus, everybody. Go and check it out. And you guys, good luck on Oscar night. And thanks for joining me today.
Thanks so much, Robert.